presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, our lead college writer, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Football's back. We get the NFL tomorrow, the Patriots on Sunday, and that's all the football that I'm thinking about right now that has started. Nothing west of the Quabbin Reservoir, just what's in front of me and what's happening across the rest of New England. So,
And I do want to mention that normally we do come on at 9 o'clock, but we flipped it tonight. The high school football preview show with Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo will be coming to you at around 9:05. We flipped it this week just because there were some scheduling conflicts, but the goal is next week to be back to our regularly scheduled time slots. Now, before we do get started here, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Yolked, one of the best protein powder products on the market. It is safe, effective, and delicious. At only 47 calories per pack, it is an easy way to get that extra protein to help you when you work out, and it'll help you build more muscle. If you are interested in this great product, visit yoke.com today for more information. And if you're a coach, as I mentioned, it's safe and effective. Younger people can take it as well. High school athletes, college athletes, they do a great job of having different types of team promotions. Again, visit yoke.com today for more information and get your team signed up and get them on this great product that is highly effective. I know a lot of people that have used it with great success. And again, adding protein to your routine shouldn't involve these giant vats of protein and you throwing in kale and bananas and everything else. This is as simple as you rip it open and you take it. So again, visit yoke.com today for more information. All right, Ryan, week one is in the books in terms of Division I New England college football. A couple of games didn't surprise us, right? We kind of knew that Boston College, UConn, they were going to take care of business, hold serve. But then there were a lot of games that, in my opinion, I thought were pretty surprising. Holy Cross almost beating Northern Illinois. Bryant going toe-to-toe with New Mexico State, ultimately losing 19-3. One of the best defensive performances I've seen out of the Bulldogs in a long time. Merrimack almost beating Kent State, losing 21-17, okay? And then there's UMass, which we'll get into. But, yes, Boston College and UConn held serve, but a lot of these other games, they were pretty good games, and there were 2 or 3 potential upsets in the offing.
yeah, I think it's really exciting to see how close a lot of those teams came and right off the bat, right? I think that last year there were times where it took some teams a little bit to get going. I don't think we saw as many close games that I can just, off the cuff remember from FCS versus FBS last year here in New England. But right off the bat, we saw almost a couple upsets. I mean, I was following along with the Merrimack game, and that was really exciting. And, they, if not for giving up the kick return touchdown, it's like they're who knows how that game looks, right? So, in same with Holy Cross, I think that Northern Illinois, with a lot of changes to the roster, of course, but definitely overlooked them, right? So, just excited to think of what can come, and hopefully this bodes well for a lot of their conference play.
Yeah, and Merrimack, let's not forget, last year they go out to Air Force and almost knock them off. So
Right.
Mike Giannetti's squad isn't intimidated by that big FBS atmosphere. They show up, they execute the game plan, they play hard, and they put themselves in a position where they could potentially beat an FBS opponent. Again, we saw it on Saturday at Kent State. They do come home for their home opener this weekend against St. A's. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Of course, we're going to start locally with Boston College, 66-10 win over Fordham. Not much to say here. Dylan Larnigan played well. Thought they threw the football pretty well. The running game left a little something to be desired. Defense was dominant, but let's not kid ourselves here. We expected Boston College to win big, and they did. Probably a little bigger than we thought, but Fordham is not the program they were a couple of years ago in the Patriot League. BC does what it's supposed to do, takes care of business, setting up a very important early season matchup on Saturday night in East Lansing against Michigan State. But just some thoughts on Boston College taking care of business on Saturday against Fordham.
I really think the biggest one is agreeing with you that, you would have thought, Turbo Richard would have a bit of a better game against this Fordham team, who I think we were saying last week was picked last in the Patriot League. But I think Dylan Lonergan, 4 touchdowns, that's the real deal, right? Lewis Bond looked the part just as he's been last season, picking up where he left off, and the defense really just making life hell for Fordham. I think they checked off every box that you want when you open up against an FCS team. And I think, full credit to Billy O'Brien for getting them ready. I thought it was, by all accounts from what we saw, pretty good crowd too. So I think it's the ideal start to the season for them that they needed, especially going into this week. But yeah, Grayson James, did mop up duty. Maybe you would have liked to see him a little bit earlier in the game. But yeah, I think that it's the perfect start to the season.
Yeah, and again, look, that's why you schedule games like these, because you want to go in, you want to work out the early season kinks, you want to play well, get your guys into a rhythm, play some of your depth guys, get out of there healthy and with the win, and go on and play the bigger games on your schedule. And again, not much needs to be said here. I mean, there's a big difference between Boston College and Fordham. But to your point, if you're Bill O'Brien, if you're his coaching staff, you got to be pretty pleased with the way your team played overall. Sure, you could have run the football a little bit better. Maybe you could have done a couple of other things better. But overall, a solid performance for the Eagles going into a game this week at Michigan State that is going to be a pretty important litmus test early on to give us an idea of where this football team is. And we're going to come back to Boston College and talk about that game here in a little bit. UConn takes care of business against Central Connecticut State, 59-13. The new triplets, as I like to call them, Joe Fagnano, Cam Edwards, Skylar Bell, had a huge game in the win. CCSU actually scored first in that game to go up 7-0 early. For them, the big story here is running back Elijah Howard did get banged up in this game. Uncertain as to whether or not he will be available this week against Division II AIC. But nonetheless, UConn, like Boston College, did what they were supposed to do, hold serve at home, take care of business against an opponent that they're better than. They've got a big one this Saturday when they visit Syracuse. But if you're a UConn fan, you got to be pretty happy with where the Huskies picked up after last season and them going 9-4 and winning the Fenway Bowl.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that Nick Evers did well too when he came in, and just that three-headed monster.
McDonald played as well. All three quarterbacks played well.
Right, and it's tough to see that, if you have three solid running backs, they all do well, and in front of one of if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the higher non-Power 4 conference attendances as well. The Renton looked sold out almost, right, for a game against an in-state team, which maybe helped a little bit. Maybe you get some of their traveling folks, but it was packed, and I think that the fever is real for UConn football, which is you saw on full display, which is really exciting. And I'm getting maybe ahead of myself, because obviously we could talk about Skylar Bell and how well he played and how the rest of the team did, but this is where I think you wonder. This is a whole maybe other conversation, right? But when you're doing this well and you're UConn, you're playing for a good bowl, but this is when you're like, man, I would love to be in a conference to see what we can do with it, right? This is when you're like, if this is setting up what could be another amazing season for them, you're like, damn, I would have loved to see what we could do in the AAC or something like that, But I know that's a whole other conversation. But I'm excited for UConn, just to see how well they played, and I checked it in earlier. I was like, this is closer than I thought. And then they pulled away like the good team that they are. So, I feel for Elijah Howard. He's got a big season ahead. I think he could probably take this week off if he needed to against AIC, but still, it's good for the state of Connecticut for football.
Yeah, and again, let's not forget, coming into the season, CCSU was the preseason favorite in the NEC. So losing Howard, who was the offensive player of the year last year in the conference, that's a big blow. That offense runs through him. Brady Olson and the passing game, those guys can do what they do because they get a lot of 8-man boxes because teams stack the box to stop Howard. Without him back there, especially if it ends up being a longer-term thing, that's going to be problematic for this Blue Devils offense. They need him. He's arguably the best offensive player in the conference. You've got to have him back there to make your offense go. All right, we have to talk about the alma mater. And, I talked about this on Monday night on the New England Football Show with Kevin Stone. And I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I was very confident last week that UMass would beat Temple. And I've always, look, I'll admit that I drink the UConn Kool-Aid. I'm always a little bit more reserved on Boston College, and I'm always realistic on UMass and what I think they are. I drank the preseason Kool-Aid because I am a big believer in Joe Harris-Simiak and the staff he's assembled there. I drank the Kool-Aid. I talked myself, despite the fact that I knew K.C. Keeler was a good coach and that Temple football team is going to be ready to play. I drank the Kool-Aid, excuse me, and I got myself to believe that they can win this football game. And you were there. 42-10 was the final. Have at it, Haas.
I mean, it's really hard because there's been so much back and forth on Twitter since this game, and I think what I'm really having a hard time is like, it's hard not to look at how they are without what's happened before them, and that's totally fair, right? It's really hard not to be like, man, it's been so bad that it's like I can't keep seeing how bad this is. But I'm just trying to urge people, and maybe I'm trying to tell myself that like you have to try and look at it independent from what we've seen in the past, because this is a different team. Yeah, there's a lot of returning players, but this is Joe Harris-Simiak's UMass football program, and there are a lot of mistakes that we have seen in the past. But there are a lot of guys that's all they know, right? And Coach said that in his presser after the fact. He said it this week that this is what these guys know when it gets tough. All they know is how to lose, right? And he's trying to.
Let me stop you there for one sec, Ryan. He says that, but he turned over a lot of the roster. There's a lot of new faces there. So, with all due respect to him, is okay. So, unless these guys did a lot of losing where they were before they came here, I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. There aren't that many guys on the team right now that were here last year, is my point. Yeah, maybe those guys, all they do know is losing, and he's not wrong. But a lot of the guys he brought in. So is he saying this about them? I mean, again, I don't think there are enough guys left over from the Don Brown era to say, well, that's all they know how to do is lose. We gotta change the culture and learn how to win. I don't know.
It's probably about half the team. It's probably about half,
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, and I guess like I made this point when I can't remember if it was in my preview last week or the season preview, how I do think that there is something to be said that a lot of guys that transfer are either not playing where they are at. So even if they're on a team that's winning, they're not part of that winning. And maybe they're not in that mentality, like, oh, great, we just won another bowl game. I'm the fourth string wide receiver at Duke, but I'm not part of that winning. Like, yeah, you're part of that culture, but you're not on you're not on the field. And yeah, there are some guys that are looking to win, and maybe they were before. So I guess that's where maybe he might be coming from, on top of the guys like a Jaquan Gibson, T.Y. Harding, because it is a brand new running back room, right? For example, like in that whole skill position. But I'm just trying to look at it independent, and I'm trying to just have some grace, because for me, there's nothing else that I could do. There's nothing else I could do other than just be like, I have to give this guy time. And I get there's a lot of people
who don't have a choice. There were too many people after the game on social media already throwing out the baby in the bathwater here. Right. People need to stop. Okay. Right. I understand the expectations are higher than they have been the last couple of years. But guess what? They were higher when Don Brown showed up 3 years ago.
Right.
And I get that there's a standard there that the UMass football fan base wants this program to reach. But we need to be realistic here. And unfortunately, yes, I get it. It seems like we've been saying this now for 20 years, never mind the last 10 or so years. But you're going to have to continue to be patient with this thing. This program is just not in a place right now where it can consistently win football games. And quite frankly, Ryan, I'm not sure it'll ever get there.
No, and the two big points that I really want to say tonight, because you can't do it in 150 whatever characters, right? What pisses me off about those people, and what I find really funny, is that these same people who are saying, why are we not better? Why are we not this? Are the diehards who've been here forever that know the turmoil in this program. So it's kind of like looking at, your car and being like, man, I know this is a red car, but I really want it to be white. Like, why is my car not white now? I want it to, even though it's like, what this is, right? Like, out of all people, I don't want to call out certain people. Out of all people, how crappy this has been. So you can't, in anyone's right mind, expect it to turn around overnight and just become this, like, why are we not like, so-and-so? Like, why are we not like South Alabama, Arkansas State? I don't know. Why are we not like this? Because everyone's like, you can turn around a program now. There's no more excuses. Yes, there are, because you can point out a school like JMU who bring in Bob Chesney right away and they still do well. But you can also point out 100 other schools that bring in someone else and that they suck that first year, that second year, even though it's a transfer port. It doesn't just because you have all these guys at your disposal, yeah, you can do it quicker, but that doesn't mean it happens for everybody and that the hit rate is so high. And I'm just sick of this whole, like, it's a transfer portal era. You should be better. Everyone else can do it. Actually, everyone else doesn't do it. There are some examples, sure, but in general, most don't. So we saw a lot of the same. It pissed me off. The first quarter was great, but I think one thing that UMass fans are really, really good at is right before the season starts, we're really good at talking ourselves into things to make it seem like it's better than it is and look past some stuff. Because we all were like, oh, wow, Brandon Rose. It's going to take a little bit for him to settle in, right? And then the defense, I think we all look past, like, there's some depth concerns here. They didn't bulk up in certain spots, right? We have no other choice, John, but to wait. And I get people are mad. You can be mad at the athletic director. You can be mad at all these things, but you have to, like, there's no other point than to give it time. And if we give that time, it doesn't work again, then you know what? We're sitting here again in 3 years, John, and we're talking about maybe not having a program anymore, So I don't know. I
don't know if it'll ever get to that. I think push comes to shove, they go back down to the FCS level. But
yeah, but I think
football's too big a part of it. And I hate to burst UMass fans' bubble here. Basketball has been dormant for a long time. And I know that people hang their hat on the Hockey National Championship. But remember now, Hockey East is only really big in about 4 or 5 states. And college hockey in general is only big in about 4 or 5 states. So let's not. That's big. It's important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not diminishing it. But the reality is, from a profile standpoint, you need the football program to exist. Never mind be good. You need them to be around because at the end of the day, football does stir the drink for a lot of sports, football and basketball. Those are the two. So,
and the last thing I'll say, because if you're like a UConn BC fan, you probably like think I'm the worst other host because I always talk about UMass, even though you probably love how much we stink. You probably love hearing me complain every week. But I've heard people say that FBS football just doesn't work at UMass and we should cut it. We should cut it. I hear a lot of chatter like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? We would not even be having that conversation, John, if they were just good the last 11 or whatever 13 years it's been. You know what I mean? That's what sucks, right? Is like no one would be sitting here saying like we need to go back down, we need to cut it if they were just decent. And it does belong here. There's a number of reasons why FBS should work at the University of Massachusetts, but it's just the team hasn't been good. If they lose this week to Bryant and all those people that were pissed on Saturday, I will totally be there with you. I get it. But week 1 against Temple, I'm willing to just be like, all right, that was weird, and maybe it gets better. But there are a lot of injuries too, but no one will ever hear that, right? But it's just what it is. Like, well, what can we do, right?
Yeah. Holy Cross almost beat Northern Illinois, losing 19-17. There's no moral victories in sports, especially in football. But if you're Dan Kern and his staff, you can take a lot away from a game like that. That Northern Illinois has been one of the better teams in the MAC the last few years, actually for quite a while now. So for Holy Cross to go in there, to go to DeKalb and almost beat the Huskies, if you're Dan Kern and his staff, sucks that you lost, but there's a lot of positives there that you can take from a performance like that.
Yeah, and this is Cal Swanson's first game, right? It was a quiet game for Jaden Clairvaux, but just to think of what could be to come. But still, you pushed a very good team last year to the brink and really scared the crap out of them. And I think you did pretty well against the pass is what's really, really encouraging, right? Like there's things you can take away that, like you said, there's no moral victories. You still lost. But there are a lot of positives that you can just take as a team that you can build on. And, I mean, I'm happy for them. I mean, it's nice to see a team like NIU kind of get a charge from a school in Worcester that a lot of people probably might not even know where it was, right, when you're going out that way. So I'm encouraged, and it's too bad they didn't do it because you want to see at least one because we've seen a lot of New England teams at the FCS level push these 1A schools, but I'd love to see a win. So
yeah, and Merrimack, as we mentioned earlier, losing to Kent State 21-17, had an opportunity going into the fourth quarter to potentially win that game. Again, as I said earlier, it speaks to the job that Mike Giannetti and his staff has done. Aiden Pereira, dual threat quarterback. We know what he can do. We saw it firsthand at Central Catholic High School. He scored 10 touchdowns in a game once his senior year. He's a dude, had almost 300 yards of total offense, threw for almost 200 passing, rushed for over 100. He's going to be a player. And the thing with Merrimack is they're an FCS independent, but people are going to get to know Aiden Pereira. They're going to see what we got to see. He put his skill set on full display on Saturday in what would have been an upset win over Kent State. I know Kent State's bad, but for a Merrimack program that's still a Division I UB, if you can go on the road and beat an FBS school, that would be a big win for a program like Merrimack.
Yeah, and I think you said it last week. You were very confident that they could pull off the win, and it was a kick return touchdown away from potentially being, seeing a huge, upset. And 275 plus purpose yards for Aiden Pereira is huge, because you're looking at, especially after last year when Merrimack lost, how are they going to, get that production in the run game? And you have it with him, but you are going to need the run backs, I think, to step up a little bit. But you're going to want to see more out of Seth Schweitzer, I think, even though I think he has still had a pretty good game, but just a little more consistency as they continue to build over the course of the season will be encouraging.
Yeah, our good friend NEC Blitz, thanks for checking in, brother. Appreciate you as always. Check out his site. Follow him on X. Does great work covering the NEC. He says would go so far as to say that Kent State upset Merrimack. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Kent State has sucked for a while here now. I mean, Kent State and Akron are bad football programs. And you know what? If you're a Merrimack, if you're a Sacred Heart, if you're a Stonehill, if you're a Bryant, load up against those schools, because that could get you a much-needed FBS win and help your program's profile. But, they haven't been very good, and I would agree. I mean, you can almost make the argument that they upset Merrimack. Going over to the CAA, Rhode Island survived after trailing 17-14 at the half, survives against the Campbell Camels, one of the best names in all of college athletics, 31-20. Big game for Devin Farrell, big game for Marquise Buchanan, big game for Antoine Littlejohn, who had a nice game on the ground, couple of touchdowns, 85 yards rushing. URI got a scare, winning at the half. Their veteran leadership, their coaches, they made the necessary adjustments, come out, play a strong second half, pick up a win. Got a big early season tilt in the CAA on Saturday at Stony Brook. But you know what? If you're Jim Fleming, Ryan, you kind of want this. You want your team to get pushed, because now you have plenty that you can work on as you continue into this early portion of the season.
Yeah, and I think what's really encouraging is that, I think URI at times struggled last season with the run, right? So to see Antoine Littleton have a good game with 2 touchdowns, and is really, really encouraging. And Marquise Buchanan having a tremendous game, like you're saying. So, and they battled back. I think we saw this a lot last year with these URI team, is that they can get down and they can face adversity and they can come back. I mean, not ideal week one, but that's continued from last season. So if you can keep on doing that, then it's really, really encouraging when you get into those postseason games, in which I definitely think URI will be. So maybe Campbell's better than we thought they'd be, because they were kind of picked more towards the end of the CAA. But still, you're at home under the lights. There's a lot rocking with URI football right now, so it's still encouraging.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, again, they came from behind. You're trailing at the half, showed a lot of resiliency, had a big second half. And again, look, this team graduated a lot of key contributors from last season, but you still have Devin Farrell. You still have Marquise Buchanan. You still have A.J. Pena on defense. This team has plenty of talent. They should, once again, they were the preseason favorite to win the CAA. They were picked to finish first. They should be in the mix from start to finish to potentially either win another share of the CAA like they did last year, or win it outright and make the playoffs. That's the expectation there now. The bar has been raised to that point. I think this is a good win for them. I think that this says a lot about where this program is now. They might not have done this 3 or 4 years ago, but since last year, they've become a program now that can come from behind and win a lot of these close games. UNH picks up a 27-10 win over NC Central. Matt Vezza steps in as a starting quarterback, has a nice day at the office. Big thing that impresses me with this UNH team, Ryan, is, look, a lot of new faces. It doesn't matter. You have tradition. You have a strong program. Guys just step up and fill roles, and this program keeps rolling along, and the beat keeps going on, because once again, UNH football is an established culture that can carry itself moving forward. And all you really need now is you don't rebuild, you reload. Guys just step into roles. And we saw this on Saturday. Big win for the Wildcats to open the season.
Yeah, you're going to kind of an unfamiliar territory in some ways, right? Playing down in the MEAC, the MEAC, right? And you're taking on a team that's already played a week. They've got a lot more football under their belt than you do, and you've got a lot of turnover and a new quarterback, and who I thought performed pretty well, right? Because that's the thing about Veza, is that he's able to run the ball really well, and I think that we've seen that in the past with like Max Brosmer could take off a little bit, but Veza is a little bit, I think, has a little bit more skills running the ball. Caleb Burke is, I think, one of the best wide receivers in New England. Would like to see the tight ends get a little bit more involved, I think, for the Wildcats, but still, just to go down, get that win in semi-unfamiliar territory. I think he said we can't speak highly enough of Coach Santos and what he's able to do, going, I believe, his 4th or 5th year now, and just keeping that culture going. And you just want to see UNH take that next step. And, and it's going to be tough coming up this week, that's for sure, but they don't shy away either.
Yeah, they got Holy Cross at home. We'll be covering that game for you. Our Alan Lessels will be there for that one. Brian, as I mentioned earlier, losing to New Mexico State 19-3. Again, there's no such thing as a moral victory in football, but this is an important performance for this program. Now, you hope that they can carry it over defensively, especially because this Bryan offense, I think, has the potential to be pretty good. I think once Brennan Meyer gets going here and he starts getting more comfortable with the system, he's got enough big play guys on the perimeter. They've got a stable of 3 or 4 backs that can run the ball, an experienced offensive line back. It sucks to lose, but if you're a Bryan fan, you have to be very happy with the performance of the defense. That game was close going into the 4th quarter. Bryan had a shot to win it. Yes, you should be concerned with the offense, but I have a lot of faith in Chris Merritt. I have a lot of faith in this program. I think the offense bounces back starting this week at UMass. But overall, if you're a Bryan fan, a positive performance against a New Mexico State team that was good a couple of years ago, but hasn't been as good in recent years. But nonetheless, they're an FBS opponent. You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, you're going all the way out west for this one, and you've got another road game this week. 2 straight FBS opponents to start the season is not easy for any program, at that level. So to go in there and play as strongly as they did, really shut down the run. Forced a couple turnovers, and I think that's what's encouraging, right? If you're looking ahead this week, I think you have to be a little bit better against the pass. And the explosive plays, I think, were really what I think hurt Bryan, especially more towards the end of that game. But if they can get the run game going a little bit too and complement Meyer, I think that you're looking at another potential really competitive game.
Stonehill losing to Sacred Heart 12-7. Really not an impressive performance by either team here. Stonehill looked better, though. Their defense played much better. Offensively, they only scored 7 points, but O'Connell played well at quarterback, had a big day for them. I mean, again, if you're Stonehill, you look much better than you did a year ago when you only won 1 game. If you're Sacred Heart, though, Ryan, if you're Mark Knopfrey in this squad, again, you're going to play good defense. You're going to run the football. Those have been staples of your program. But you've got to get more out of your quarterbacks. You've got to get more out of your passing game. To only win 12-7, I think that, yes, a win is a win, but there's got to be a certain level of disappointment there as well if you're Sacred Heart.
Yeah, and I kept checking in with this game, and you just kept seeing no score, and it was just – I think we saw this at times, and again with them last year in the passing game. It just there's not as much there. They're always a very strong running team, but they need to have that complementary football, which I just don't think we've seen as much. And it really just came down to defense. And if you're Stonehill, that's got to be tough too. You played a good game, you allowed 12 points, and to not walk away with more than that, especially when I think you're Jack O'Connell completes 30 passes, has 212 yards, and it's just 1 pick that can be the difference. But if they can get their run game going a little bit too, I think that's going to be really encouraging. But I think for what you and I were talking about for Stonehill last week, it's a really good moral victory start to the season, even though that's not something the coach ever wants to talk about, right?
It's the theme of this week's show, though, moral victories. And finally, New Haven in their debut as a Division I program, playing in the NEC, of course, loses to Marist 31-14. However, the transfer quarterback, A.J. Duffy, did have a big day for the Chargers. They're going to play their first NEC game this week when they travel to Mercyhurst. Again, this is a game where Marist jumps on them early. They carry the play. New Haven shows some life in the second half. They come back. It's not enough. No such thing as a moral victory, but if you're Coach Mark Powell, there are a lot of good things to take out of this one. The performance of A.J. Duffy, to me, is the key point here. He played really well. And if he plays well in this passing game, makes the explosive big plays that we saw in this game, then this New Haven team is going to be a little bit better than we think. They're going to be certainly going to be better off than we think, at least offensively.
Yeah, and it's when you think about a debut at this level, I think that was a really good landing point for them to be taking on a team like Marist, who is by no means a juggernaut at this level, and to I think hang in there as much as they did. Of course, they struggled in the first half, but they kind of settled in the second week. They've got another chance this week against Mercyhurst, but there's going to be a lot of these types of games this season where you're like, oh man, we missed our shots here, right? But to come out as they did and I think not get blown out. I mean, 2 touchdowns is I wouldn't call a blowout, but at the same time, it's there's something that they can build on at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. You are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. And as I mentioned, we are brought to you by Yolked. Visit yolked.com today for more information on one of the best protein powder products on the market, safe and effective. It's all natural, comes from egg yolks, 47 calories per pack. You can't beat it. You pump one down before you work out, get a good workout in, get that protein element in. You'll start to see results in no time. And coaches, high school coaches, college coaches, as I mentioned, this is a safe and effective product. Visit yolk.com today for more information on how you could get a discount for your team. If you buy a certain amount of the product, you can get it at a cheaper price. So visit yolk.com today for more information. All right, let's look ahead to this week, of course. Week 2 here in the Division I college ranks in New England, and we're going to start our preview with Boston College at Michigan State. This is a game that's going to be on Peacock, nationally televised game on Saturday night. Last year's game at the Heights was nationally televised. Of course, Boston College beat Michigan State at home last year. Look, Sparty's going to be better. Spartans are going to be better. You have Aiden Childs back at quarterback, Jonathan Smith going into year 2. They won last week. He's got the program in a better place than it was a year ago. They did a pretty good job in the portal, reinforcing the roster. I've said this all offseason, Ryan. For Boston College, this is the litmus test, in my opinion. Yeah, you got to play Clemson at home. Yeah, you got to play Notre Dame. And those are measuring stick games as well. But this is the game that I think in many ways is going to paint a picture for us, if you will, as to what this Boston College football team is going to be in 2025.
Yeah, and I know that we talked a little bit about how last year's game meant so much to the program, and we had people, on board because you win that game at home, and maybe there's not as much visibility if they win because it's away. But I really do think that it's gonna mean even more than last year's win if they're able to do this against Sparty in Michigan. So I like BC. I think BC has more. I think they return more. I think there's more for them to offer. So I lean the Eagles here, but I just worry about the away factor. I know Dylan Donaghy was a little bit banged up this week. I guess he returned to practice today, which is encouraging. But I'm going to lean the Eagles here. I think that they looked a little bit better in their debut last week than I think Michigan State did. So I'm gonna take the Eagles here, but there's a lot at stake with it.
Michigan State is favored by 4.5 points. The over-under is 46.5. This one's hard for me. It's hard for me because I covered that game last year, and on the surface, Boston College got off to a good start, carried the play early. They kind of let Michigan State hang around, and they made it a game at the end. But I think Jonathan Smith is one of the best coaches in the country. I think he is going to get this Michigan State program back on track this year where they could potentially win 7, 8, maybe even 9 games and get a decent bowl bid. In the end, I do think you're right. On paper, Boston College is the better team. But there's just something in my gut that tells me go Michigan State. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to pick Sparty. I like Michigan State. I think they win by 3. I don't think they cover. So if I was betting on this game, I would take the Eagles as a dog. But I'm going to go Michigan State here in a close one. It'll be close like it was last year, even closer this year. But I like Michigan State at home to win this thing by a field goal and pick up a big win for them. And for Boston College, this would be a tough loss because, again, as I mentioned, it's a statement game. It's a litmus test game. If you don't pass the test It's hard. All right, next up, we have UConn traveling to Syracuse to take on the Orange. Syracuse is favored in this one by 6.5. The over-under is high here, Ryan, 58.5. Are you buying into the UConn hype as much as I am? I think this offense is terrific. I think they have a chance to be really good. I think Gordy Samus is really gotten into a groove here as an offensive coordinator and as a play caller. That 58.5 to me, if I were putting money on this game, I'd take the over. I think both of these teams are going to be pretty good offensively. I think that UConn can win this game. They're going to have to play clean in all three phases. Syracuse looked good at times last week in a loss to Tennessee, but I think we're going to have a shootout here. I could see this being a 31-28 kind of game.
Yeah, this is one of those, I think, who laughs last, games where you're like, like you said, it could be 27-27 in the fourth quarter, and it's like, who's not gonna make that mistake? And this is one where I think I might be screwing myself with my picks early on. I feel like Syracuse is going to win this one. I want to pick Syracuse, but I really I think UConn is the better team, and I'm just gonna, like BC, I'm gonna take UConn just on paper, and I might be starting off 0-2, right? And that's fine with me because I want to take my chances because I think that this UConn team has a little bit more to offer, right, than Syracuse. But they did okay against Tennessee last week. Like they did a lot better than I thought. It wasn't 45-7, it was 45-26, and it wasn't obviously close most of the game, but still, I'm going to take the Huskies here, and I'm going to stay New England. But I'm willing to take that bet.
I said it earlier. I'll say it again. I've been drinking the blue Kool-Aid now since Jim Moore came to town. I think this is going to be a tough game for them, arguably their toughest game of the season. I don't care. I'm taking the Huskies here. I'm still going to continue to sip on the Kool-Aid. I believe in Jim Moore. I believe in Joe Fagnano. I believe in Skylar Bell. I believe in Cam Edwards in this offense. And I think that UConn defense, when they need a big stop, that secondary is really good. They can support that front seven. When they need a big stop, they're going to get it. I'm going UConn here. Now watch, we're going to end up disappointed. But then again, you're a UMass guy. You should be used to disappointment. Speaking of UMass, they host Bryant. There's no line or over-under on this game. I'm going to get this right out of the way. And I have a lot of people that are fans of what we do on that Bryant campus. And Chris Merritt is one of my favorite coaches that we cover and deal with. But look, as bad as things are for UMass right now, they're going to win this football game. I think that this will be a better game than people think. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think it'll be very similar to that Merrimack game a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think it'll play out that way. I see UMass winning this one 28-14, possibly 28-21.
Yeah, it's a bit of I envision this as a bit of a slog that they get done and they look okay overall, and it's hard because it was one quarter and stuff is scripted in that first drive and all that stuff. But I thought Brandon Rose made a lot of nice throws. I think Jaquan Gibson.
You stick with him, by the way, at quarterback?
Yeah.
Or do you go to Grant Jordan?
No, I think if he comes out and does not play well this week, then I think that you split reps going into those games against Iowa and Mizzou personally. Just why not, right? Like if it starts to get out of hand with Rose, go to Jordan earlier than you might have, right? But I'm taking UMass. I think they're going to win. I'm worried about T.Y. Harding. I think he's going to be out this week. He walked away in a sling after last game, and he's a really strong, quick wideout. But let's see more Rocco Griffin. He looked good in the first quarter, right? Or first half rather last week. You get down, so what can you do? You can't really run the ball as much. But I think UMass wins. I think you hit it right in the head about the Merrimack game, and I think that'll quell some concerns if they look good this week. But I think they really need to, because if this is like a Central Connecticut game last year where it's close, then we're really going to be having some struggle. There's going to be a lot of anger. And please, I hope there's no thunderstorms on Saturday. It's supposed to rain. There's a slight chance of storms. I can't have a Miami, Ohio incident like a few years ago. So.
We don't want that for our beloved Ryan Barry. Yeah. We definitely don't want that. But we both agree UMass is going to win this football game and take care of business. As I mentioned earlier, no lines on these games. And I know in the past we've made up lines, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to preview and pick the games. URI at Stony Brook, big early CAA matchup. Stony Brook got blown out last week at San Diego State. They're going to be licking their wounds, are the Seawolves. I like URI in this one. They're the best team in the CAA. They proved that last week coming from behind to beat a Campbell team that I know preseason-wise wasn't ranked high, but still has some good skill. I think that the momentum that they established in that game carries over. I think this will be a tight game. Stony Brook is a good football team. They're well coached. Don't let last week's result fool you. But I think URI is slightly better, and I like them in a 24-17, 24-21 kind of game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking the Rams, and I think what's encouraging is that, San Diego State was not picked to finish very high in the Mountain West, and they blew out Stony Brook, who was supposed to be one of the better teams in the CAA this year. I mean, I didn't think they wouldn't score a single touchdown. I thought that game might have been at least like 35-10 or something, So maybe Stony Brook will be like, all right, we're home. We're against a team that we're closer to, but I like the Rams still.
Yeah, so do I. I think that they get it done. UNH hosting Holy Cross in what has been a good rivalry here in recent years. These two schools have played some great games, including a couple years ago in the FCS playoffs. Look, UNH is tough to beat at home. We know how tough they are to beat up in Durham, but this Holy Cross team really impressed me last week. I think that this is going to be a close game, Ryan, but I think Jaden Clervaux, he struggled last week. He's not going to struggle 2 weeks in a row. I think he's going to bring his big boy pads. I think Dan Curran, the UNH alum, I think he is going to want to turn this thing into a fist fight in a phone booth. He's going to want this to become a physical game. I think that this will be a tight game. It'll be a back and forth game, but I like Holy Cross in this one. I think it'll be another close game like URI, Stony Brook. I think it'll be Holy Cross winning this one in a similar fashion, 24-21 kind of game. But I think that they're the more experienced team. I think that they have an advantage at running back, and I think that advantage and their overall slight advantage proves to be the difference in this one.
Yeah, agreed. I was at the game last year in Worcester when UNH pulled it out, and it was a really, really good, entertaining game. But I thought Holy Cross kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot last year, and I think that this UNH team was a little bit more ahead of them last year, but this year I think it's closer to even. I like what Holy Cross did last year. There were too many close games that Dan Curran lost in year one, and I think this is one of those ones that flips. So I'm going to go Holy Cross as well.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this is, and this is by no means a negative towards UNH, but at some point, right, you have to think that the lack of experience, they graduated a lot of talent from last year's team. At some point, you have to think that lack of experience is going to come back to hurt them. And this could be the game that happens. Now, this group's going to learn how to win, and that's going to benefit them later on down the road. But I do think that that's the difference here. I think Holy Cross's experience proves to be the difference. All right, next up we have Maine visiting William and Mary. We didn't talk about Maine losing 28-7 to Liberty last week. Black Bears played pretty well. That game was 7-7 going into the fourth quarter. Liberty scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to pull away. If you're Jordan Stevens, though, Sincere Bain, their running back, had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. If you're Jordan Stevens, again, theme of this week's show, moral victories, you have to find some positives in that. Again, no such thing as moral victories, but his football team played pretty well against a Liberty team that's well coached. We know what Jamie Chadwell can do. They play fast. They're athletic. They put a lot of pressure on people. For their defense to play as well as it did for 3 quarters, I think if you're Maine, there's a lot of positives there. Can they carry some of those positives over to this week against William and Mary?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, these are the type of games that you need to win if you're Maine, right? Because it's like you go out and you have a strong showing against Liberty and you score first, and let's see that now against your opponents, right? Because this is the type of team I think Maine is. So I'm going to go with Maine here. I think that they can get it done, and I'm hoping that they get it done because this is a program that you want to root for. There's good people there, and so yeah, I'm gonna go with Maine.
Don't forget, Maine last year had a couple big CAA wins under their belt. Villanova,
right,
Delaware. So they're a program that can go on the road and win against a tough William and Mary team that's well coached. I'm with you. I agree here. I like Maine going on the road and getting this win. I think it'll be a big win for them. Of course, this is William and Mary's last year in the CAA. So last time they're going to meet each other unless they were to play in the playoffs down the road. But nonetheless, I think Maine goes on the road and gets it done. I don't see a letdown here. They deserved better on Saturday. They deserved to win that football game. They played well enough for 3 quarters. Unfortunately, the cream rises and they ran out of gas. But I'm with you. I like Maine here as well. Another close game, though. They're not going to blow them out. I could see this being a 21-17, 24-21 type of game. Going over to the NEC real quick. New Haven at Mercyhurst. Both programs coming off of losses last week. Both programs, newbies in the NEC. Mercyhurst had their moments last year, but you know what? I'm going to go homer here, and I'm going to keep it local. I'm going to go with A.J. Duffy and the Chargers here. I think Mark Powell picks up his first win as coach of the New Haven Chargers. I think Duffy plays well. I think they get it done on the road, pick up their first win as a D1 program.
Yeah, agreed. I'm gonna take the Mustangs as well. I think
Chargers.
Yes, Chargers. Yes, thank you.
The horse is their logo.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
New Haven, folks, it was a Freudian slip.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I just willfully went along. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chargers as well. I think that they're gonna get one of these, future conference opponents. And I think this is the Mercyhurst is the team to do that too. So I'm going to pick them as well.
Yeah, let's not forget Stonehill had some pretty good success their first year in D1 as well. They were very competitive. I think New Haven could be competitive as well. I don't think last week is an indictment of what this program has talent-wise and what they could do as the year goes on. Stonehill has their home opener on Saturday in Easton. They host Lafayette out of the Patriot League. A lot of positives last week for the Skyhawks, but they've got to play better on offense. Dan Hebert, their new offensive coordinator, obviously a lot to like in the passing game. You mentioned this earlier. They got to get the ground game going here. I don't think they do it this week, though. I think this is another close game, but I'm going Lafayette here, winning this one 17-14, 21-17. It'll be that kind of game.
Yeah, it's tough because I know Lafayette is kind of middle of the pack, Patriot League, but it's, this is at home, which I do like for Stonehill. I do like that it's at home and that, they played close last week, but it's just, can they put both facets of the ball together? I think until we see that happen, I'm going to have to, depending who they're playing, take the opposition. So I'm going to go with Lafayette here.
All right. Next up in the NEC, we have AIC, American International College, visiting Central Connecticut State University. I think that we both universally agree CCSU bounces back, picks up a big win against AIC.
Oh, yeah, I'd say so. Again, we talked earlier about some concerns for Elijah Howard, but, hopefully it's nothing serious and he can come back and be the player he was last year. But I think that AIC, this is exactly the program that they need to take on this week. So,
yeah, I agree. I think CCSU picks up their first win of the season. Hopefully, again, Howard's not out too long. They can get by without him, and then when he comes back, they could stay in the mix in the NEC. Going over to the FCS independent ranks, Sacred Heart, coming off their win over Stonehill, visits Lehigh. I'm going to go Lehigh here. Until until Sacred Heart, shows me that they can be better and more consistent on offense. That's the knock on this program. As I said earlier, they're going to run the ball. They're going to play good D, but they got to get more out of that passing game. I don't think it's this week. Lehigh's a pretty good football team, well coached. I'm going with Lehigh here in a game that, again, because Sacred Heart plays good defense, is another one of these 24-17 kind of games, but I like Lehigh winning this one by 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, same. I think that they're a program who is supposed to be one of the darlings of the Patriot League this year, and I think there's more that they have that the Pios don't have yet, or have yet to show us. And obviously it's been 1 week, of course, but I just think that it's the defense is there. Can they shut down Lehigh? Sure, but can they put up the points to match? So until then, I'm going to go with Lehigh.
And finally, we have Merrimack hosting St. A's, just like CCSU and AIC. And again, these are all, by the way, former D2 foes. They played each other in the old NE10, so they know each other well. Merrimack hosting St. A's in their home opener at Duane Stadium, coming off a 21-17 loss to Kent State, a game they could have won. I think they take care of business here. I could see them. Now, the thing with Merrimack is they're a run-first defensive program, so I'm not sure I see a blowout here, but I still see a 10 to 14 point win here for the Warriors. They take care of business and pick up their first dub on the season.
Agreed. I'm going with the Warriors, and I always think that I always think to those NE10 days when I used to go to Merrimack, and you see all those schools, and now you have some that it's like watching your friend get called up to varsity, but you're still on JV. It's one of those weird things. It must be so. But I'm with you. I think Aiden Pereira gets it done, and hopefully he can get some rest too.
Yeah, I mean they're all. I mean, you got AIC, you got Merrimack, you got St. A's, Bryant. They were all in the NE10 at one point. So it's. I think that's a great analogy though about the varsity JV feel to all this. Some of them have moved on and moved up, and some of the other schools have decided to stay in D2. All right, Ryan. Final thoughts here before we wrap up this week's show. I think we did pretty good. I don't think we missed one.
No, great job. And hopefully there's nothing that I'm ranting about next Tuesday, but also just hoping for success for a lot of these teams this week. And it's fun now that they're playing each other. I know it's only week 2, but still, it's great when we can see UNH take on Holy Cross in games like that. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good week of football action here in New England in the D1 ranks. And of course, I do want to remind you, make sure you go over to anyfootballjournal.com for all your New England Division I college football needs. We've got you covered. You're not going to find college coverage like ours. I promise you. We'll have all our previews up by Saturday. We have our we have our New England Division I college poll. All 17 teams are ranked. We had our college dudes of the week. You can find all that stuff at anyfootballjournal.com. It's real simple. You go over to the website, you subscribe for $2.99 a month. You get some really good football coverage, and we're all football all the time. There's no off season for us. We're not moving on to other sports. We strictly do football. So if you love football in New England, you're going to love New England Football Journal. Please make sure you go over there and subscribe. Again, $2.99 a month, pretty good deal. If you're willing to give up a cup of coffee per month, it's worth it to get some of the best football coverage in the area. Ryan, great job as always. Looking forward to your coverage on Saturday. Bryant at UMass. That'll be fun. We'll have full coverage of Boston College and UConn's games as well. And we're also going to have coverage of Holy Cross UNH. Our Alan Lessels will be there. And we're also going to have coverage of Lafayette at Stonehill. So looking forward to that. That'll do it for this week's episode of the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Sarianides. Till next week, peace.